Welcome back to our growing experiment. We're here with Kaila from Kaila's Flower Farm. Kaila, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your farm?
Sure. So my name is Kaila and I own Kaila's Flower Farm, and I sell seasonal bouquet memberships, mostly is what I do. My partner and I have a 13-acre farm in field. I pretty much stay home and grow all of our food, and he's a full-time nurse in long-term care. So I've been homesteading for a decade, but flower farming basically started during quarantine. A friend asked if I could make her wedding bouquets because she knew that I grew a lot of flowers. Mm-hmm. So after I did that, I basically thought, well, I should grow more flowers. And in 2020, I did some bouquet memberships. It went really, really well. And so this year I tripled how much I'm growing. And now it's a lot. And I'm doing a lot more memberships. So that's pretty much a little bit about me and how the flower farm started.
Okay. And you mentioned you've been doing like your own sort of homesteading kind of thing for the last 10 years?
Yep. Like growing food. I probably started, it was 10 years ago this year, growing food, and then slowly, that becomes a lot of other things. So I, raise our meat. I grow our vegetables and put it all away for the winter so that we can eat all year. More and more every year, but yeah, for 10 years now, and I'm getting good at it.
That's good. So when you started to now, like how much of a difference do you say? Well, I mean, it must be a lot, of course.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, 10 years. 10 years. I didn't have internet. I started. I had moved off grid into the bush, and I didn't have a smartphone, didn't have internet. And it was very different, you just learn the hard way. And then, 3 or 4 years into it, I got internet, I got a smartphone, and that changed everything, because like you can look everything up. But with, growing food or, trying to do things for yourself, be more sustainable, you're always learning. The biggest difference is things are easier now because I've been doing it a long time. That's probably the biggest difference. And information is so easy to come by. So if I want to learn something new, like everything is free online basically to learn, which, I bought books back then. I listened to podcasts actually, because podcasts were something I could do, and spoke to neighbors, and that's how I started learning. But yeah, it was a long time ago now.
So what was the first impulse that really led you to dive into it? Because as you mentioned, you didn't quite have the same access to information that, say, someone like us does, because we got into this fairly recently, and probably because, like you're mentioning, a lot of podcasts and a lot of other information, anything you want to learn on YouTube or whatever. So what was like the impetus for you?
I wanted to be in nature. I would say that's the real thing that started it. And as soon as you're in nature more, I think it's it becomes natural to want to grow food, to want to cultivate the land, take care of the soil, and then take care of yourself. So it kind of happened because I was learning to live with nature in the seasons, and that basically dictated everything I did. It wasn't I wanted to grow my own food. Like that's not really why I took the jump off the cliff and moved like off grid into the bush. I wanted to be in nature. It made me happy. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I think that's a lot of sort of what drives people into this too, even if it's not explicitly the reason. I think part of the calling to want to be more involved in food production, to be more involved in more involved in nature is what it is really. Like they'll say, I want to be off grid and all that other kind of stuff. And maybe in a way it's a desire to have a sort of separation from society in a way, or to get back to something like, I feel like a lot of people that we've talked to so far in this sort of field, they do seem to have this sort of calling to go to nature in some kind of way.
Yeah, I agree. In different ways, and I think with different ideas in their head. It's a very natural way to live. As soon as you are in nature, it makes sense. Things make more sense. And I think people get too overwhelmed living in the city, and I think it just sucks the life out of you. And being in nature revitalizes you. It really does. And it's good people are coming back to nature.
I agree. Like, I think the way I kind of look at things, I think a lot of people should be trying to get involved with their own food production, or at least trying to support people who are doing local food production. And then what grows up from that too is also local goods and services and stuff like that. And I think it's because, well, it's going to be, in my way of looking at it, I see it as being like a more balanced way to sort of engage with the environment, a little more thoughtful way to be engaged with the environment. I think also being far removed from how our food is produced, the cost of labor that goes into it, and the cost of just the energy that goes into it. I mean, the energy that the animals eat by way of the food they eat, or even the energy that you're going to put in with your animal husbandry and growing your own vegetables and stuff. And I feel like you kind of learn the real value of where it comes from. Like, I feel like
absolutely.
We don't understand the value of where our food comes from and how much hard work goes into it. And I think you live in that, so you'll see that exactly.
Yeah, you don't waste. You really learn not to waste things because you understand the value, the hard work. Like, it is, even if you have a little, you're growing sprouts in your kitchen, like, it's work. Every little bit that, then you put into your body, the amount of work, you're not wasting anything. You don't want to waste anything because you realize how much work it is. And that's good for everybody to experience, but also just get outside.
Yeah, of course.
Like, go outside. The food, I feel, yes, absolutely. It's very important. I like growing my own food. I don't have a lot of deep passions about the reason why. It makes me feel good. I like knowing what I'm eating. But I love being outside, and just being outside, I think more people need to do that. Just get outside, and if a garden is how you get outside, then that's amazing. Right. Absolutely, it is.
Well, what I'm kind of getting at is that there's a like you said in the beginning, it was really wanting to be in nature. And I'm definitely getting that, how you keep saying, like, it's really about getting outside and getting in nature. And that makes me think that really it maybe it sounds simple, but maybe it's not, because it's actually like built into who we are as sort of animals that walk this earth. It's like, it makes sense to be involved in what's going on in reality, right? Because I feel like almost the reality that we have constructed is sort of really a false reality on top of real reality. Real reality is outside, where all the animals and the flowers and the water is and all that kind of stuff. And then we have this sort of almost like actually kind of a prison in a way, if you look at it, that we've built on top of that to keep us away from Mother Nature, because we're kind of afraid of her. And probably with good reason to some degree. I mean, you look back a couple hundred years, there's a good reason to be afraid of her, or at least respect her, right?
Yeah. Well, and our winters are cold, Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's exactly it. I feel like just getting outside, it can change a lot about a person. It can inspire you to want to grow food or even eat seasonally. That's a big thing that people, we live in a very cold climate. We have very short growing season. Well, and you guys know that. You have your dome. It's a struggle, but there's a lot of food that grows early in the season. And if you go for a walk, you learn a little bit about foraging, you know, there's quite a bit of food that comes pretty early, and we just got to put more away. We got to put it up. But nature can give us a lot. It can give us a lot. Being outside can give us a lot. Yeah.
Well, like, and then something like that you mentioned there with the foraging skill. So that's a nice thing, because you're basically going out for a nature walk, and then you're also grabbing food while you're out there. And then when you get home, you put it away and preserve it in the best way you can. And then, or you take that, say you picked a few mushrooms, you fry them up, and there's part of your dinner or whatever it may be, right? But
yeah,
that's kind of like you were saying too, with the idea of not wasting anything. It's actually realizing the abundance of resources that are around us, if only we knew how to use them properly.
Right. I love fiddleheads. It's almost fiddlehead season, and they are so tasty. We have a huge patch right outside our farm, so I'm getting pretty excited about those. Can't grow them, but you can forage them. And they freeze really well.
What is a fiddlehead?
You don't know what a fiddlehead is?
No,
so it's like a fern. It's a type of fern, an ostrich fern that grows almost everywhere in Northern Ontario, usually near water. And so before the fern grows up and unfurls, it's like a tight little ball. And so as soon as it lifts up, you kind of cut it, and you can fry it. You have to cook it. You can't eat it raw, but it's similar to asparagus. You would cook it any way you would cook asparagus. And usually if you find a patch, it's in a very large patch, anywhere in water usually. And they are, they're really tasty, really tasty. And quick to harvest.
Okay, so I guess you go along, you go with a basket or something like that, pick as many as you can, bring them home, freeze what you can, and then eat what you want.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And they're not something that is like endangered or in low supply. Like, we have them in abundance here in Northern Ontario. So when you're harvesting, you can use that, you know, the regular foraging rule is you just take like one per plant or something like that. But you could fill a 5-gallon pail. Like, you can get a lot. And that's just one thing that is here. You know, blueberries are another thing if you can find a blueberry patch. But I don't know, and save yourself some work. I don't know, like, because growing food in the spring, you know, it's, you guys know, you have the cover to do it, but you know, but you have a different situation. I have 13 acres, and you guys have a dome to get your early spring.
Yeah, well, it's a good skill that you have, because, you know, we don't know how to forage, and it's something that we should learn more of. Because like you're saying, right, we have to get a dome and do all that stuff while you can just walk out and harvest things.
But it's very important to do what you can with what you have. Mm-hmm. That's extremely important, because everybody has the opportunity to do something. You can do something. You know, a yard, even an apartment nearby, you'd be able to get outside, you'd be able to grow something.
Yeah, it's really having the desire to do it. And then like that, and that's kind of what we tried to do with the dome too. We're like, all right, well, we want to maximize the amount of grow space, and so that's what we're trying to do and learn with that, and extend the growing season by way of doing that too. And we're getting some new fruit trees and a couple of other things to put in the back too. We haven't quite filled the back up yet, but that's
exciting.
Well, we kind of want it to be like a little food forest in the backyard. We spoke with Sudbury City Gardeners there a while back, and they had a good amount of food. They were growing in a similar sort of situation. So I know it can be done, and we're just figuring out how it works best for us. But like you mentioned, in the spring, it's a lot of work, like especially right now, getting new seeds ready, getting stuff in the dome. The dome was a lot of babysitting too, because of we started it really early in March. And so we had the heater out there, and I think that's probably more energy expenditure than really what it's worth, because I think a lot of the small plants will probably grow inside next year until more like this time, and then put them out. Like, we probably could have put them out a couple of weeks ago, because that hasn't been so bad. We've had the heater out of there for about a month. So probably late March, mid-March, we could have probably swung it. But we started like early March. and it was a little too early. Yeah.
Well, it's all learning. You have to, learn through trial by fire.
Yeah.
And but you'll figure out what works for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's like pretty much what I've been doing for 10 years, figure out what works for me. So there's certain things that I really like growing, and the flowers. You want to know why I grow the flowers? It's because everything else is really hard work, or sad, because like processing animals, nobody really wants to do that. It's sad. Picking beans for 3 days straight so that I have enough to eat for the whole winter is really not my favorite thing to do. But growing flowers, that is like therapy, right? That's my therapy on the homestead. It's my break from all of the other stuff that's really hard. And in the spring, when they start to come, right? And spring is the hardest time, you guys know, because you start the seeds, you have everything to get ready, because we've been under snow for 6 months. There's so much work to do. And as soon as those flowers start to come and everything is dead, and everywhere else it's dead, brown, those little crocuses come up, like pure joy just fills me. And like that gives me the energy to then go and get garden beds ready, like thousands of square feet of garden beds ready. Flowers can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you mentioned that. It's like as you're seeing the new life of the season, you feel that you start to come to life as well, which is, it's interesting where you're kind of having a sort of reflection between you and not reality, the environment is what I meant to say.
Living with nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Like nature is starting to sort of like blossom and show new signs of life. And when you see that, you kind of think, oh, wow. And then you kind of get that fire in your belly kind of thing, like, the spring idea. And now you're out there and getting your stuff ready. And that's really cool.
Yeah. So not only like flowers are important when you're growing food for many reasons, pollinators, you need pollinators in your garden. You want the bees, you want the butterflies, because that will make your food grow better for you, right? You'll get a bigger harvest. So having flowers in your garden for that reason is so important. Even if it's, somebody has a small garden and they just take one pot and they put one pot of, marigolds or something. It's worth it. It's really worth it. In the beginning, I used to think I didn't have enough space for flowers, it was so much work to just get the garden in. Flowers didn't seem worth it. They just were extra work. But then, you realize, well, they're so important. The bees need food too. The bugs need food. And then you get a bigger harvest, and then it makes it worthwhile. And then, you start growing more flowers, bring them in your house, put them on your kitchen table. Well, you got to be inside, cooking dinner.
Yep.
And then you get to bring a little bit inside with you. So yep. I don't know, flowers really make me so happy. And it's been nice starting to share those bouquets with other people. Maybe people don't have the same lifestyle as me, but they're in an office all day, and they get to then come home and have flowers on their kitchen table. And they get to bring a little bit of nature inside. And it's been pretty amazing and surprising. I didn't realize how much joy I would bring to other people. How much those flowers could mean to them after working so hard all day. And then they have those beautiful fresh flowers, and locally grown and affordable,
Mm-hmm.
It's been pretty amazing. I'm really excited about this season coming up too. It's a busy spring.
Well, maybe that's kind of the effect when we see beauty that it has on us, right? We see these flowers and we're sort of reminded of like the balance and the delicacy of nature. And maybe that's what kind of makes us happy about it, is it seeing that, because flowers to me have always been associated with beauty, right? It's always, maybe it's the softer side of nature in a way. It's just, and the colors of it, the smells of it, like it's perfume. it's like I can kind of see why you would be happy to have those fresh flowers. Like I know it's always nice when we have fresh flowers.
Yeah, and we haven't made it a priority really in our gardens, but moving forward, as we're talking to people, as we're learning, kind of like what you said, right? At the beginning, you're like, oh, maybe I don't need them. But now, you know, we're thinking seriously of what kind of flowers we want to throw out there just to kind of help the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead.
It will change. It will change your whole experience while you're gardening and doing all that hard work. I promise you.
One thing that you mentioned too with attracting the pollinators and stuff like that, have you planted any flowers and stuff that are also sort of attracting of insects that eat the insects that you don't want eating your food, like sort of an integrated pest control kind of idea, or any luck with that?
Here's my view on pests. Okay, I just plant more than I need.
Okay. Because I'm fighting with a bunch of bugs right now, and that's what we're planting more stuff too. And I wonder if it's the greenhouse maybe makes it a little more complicated too, but we might have to just plant a lot more stuff.
I do not know any good tricks. Cover your plants with a frost cloth. Like I get onion maggots on my garlic every year. So I cover them with frost cloth for the whole growing season. Well, like you could use anything, screen, or like just to keep the bugs out, right? And because I can only grow so much garlic, and I need it all because we love eating garlic. So cover it all for the whole season. So there's no chance of a bug getting in there. Very annoying, but that's my only pest management. Other than, like, I have chickens and I let the chickens in my garden. I don't have too much pest pressure. Planting flowers helps, or other plants, right? Because then they have other things to eat. I wouldn't say specifically there's certain plants to plant together. You know, carrots and onions are good to plant together. But for flowers, nasturtiums are a good aphid trap. Like if you have normally a lot of aphids and you plant a nasturtium, they'll go all over and eat the nasturtium sometimes. Yeah, I wouldn't put money on any of them. You know, you got to either just cover them or understand that eventually things will even out, right? The bad bugs are there, but the good bugs are going to come. So just plant more than what you need. I don't know. It's hard when you have the space though. It is hard. It's don't give up. Just don't give up.
Yeah. Well, no, like I always kind of want to plant more plants. Last year, we kind of planted too many in a small space, and we had to kind of fight with that because of the humidity levels that you're getting, because they can't breathe because you got too much vegetation there. So we learned not to do that. But then this year is the first year growing in the dome, and we haven't got it quite filled out yet. We've got some more tomatoes that we're getting ready to go in there. Nothing's been bothering our tomatoes. It's been mostly we've been having bugs on our pepper plants. We recently started getting them on our Swiss chard, and we got a bunch on our lettuce and one on our rutabaga that we planted last year there. And so I'm thinking that's probably what we're going to do. I know we're planning on putting another garden bed in, so we're gonna have a bunch more stuff in there. And we talked a lot about doing flowers too. So I think we're likely going to try to get a bunch of seeds for some flowers. And we got a back that would, I think, work with that, where we can kind of just have little flower bushes all over the place. And maybe that'll help a little bit too.
Sprinkle seeds all over the backyard.
Yeah. Exactly.
Watch it grow.
Well, and even like you can mix in your landscaping, right? Like landscape flowers don't need to be all bought from a nursery. Like, you know, if you have a little flower bed somewhere and you just mix in some like more native plants, the bugs will go there. The bugs will eat the native plants because they'll come up sooner, and keep them, you know, some of the pressure off your food that you're trying to grow. And that's one thing that I think more people should do is plant more instead of just traditional landscape. Mix in not only food. I'm a big believer in mixing food in your landscape, but also just some like native plants. I know the, what's it called? Northern Wildflower. They have some really good seeds. Restless Ravens, you guys know her. She has some good plants. Like it doesn't need to be an ornamental to be beautiful and to help with the pest pressure. It does make a huge difference giving plants to the bugs, right? giving them something other than your vegetables to eat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's definitely what we'll try to do, is do something like that. We wanted to get more flowers and stuff anyways. And I do like the idea of having like perennials or more natural kind of wildflowers that'll drop their seeds right there. And you don't have to really worry about them. They just come back every year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But and if you just like want one flower in your, like for pure beauty, I would go with the zinnia for an annual. Like if you want something that is really gonna just like for the bug idea, you get nasturtiums. They're really easy to grow, and everywhere sells seeds for them.
Okay.
And that, yeah, I would recommend those two. Well, like for even a nasturtium in your greenhouse, I feel like that in your dome, I feel like that would be a good one. It's not super big. They don't get so huge. Wouldn't take up that much space.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. I think we could definitely use some of that. I think there's a few places that we could plant that.
Well, we have to kind of see how we can make the dome a whole ecosystem on its own too, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of,
it's kind of its own bubble.
Yeah, even though it's kind of separate from nature because it's in the dome, we kind of want nature in there so that we could get all the benefits in one way, right?
And it's in there anyways, because I mean, it's got the 2 vents on it and we're in and out of it all the time. So we're going to drag stuff in on our clothes all the time too. And
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on top of having the flowers, you said you have lots of animals and stuff too. We noticed you had an emu, a cow, a pony, and a peacock.
Yeah.
So you got like a whole sort of zoo out there.
Oh my gosh, we have a lot. We have a lot. Well, but not a lot of each number. Like, so we have goats for milking. We have Nubian goats, like 5 of them. We have a flock of laying chickens. For obvious reasons. We get meat birds in and process those. I have the emus for a few reasons. Originally, it was to harvest their oil because it's really good for your skin, like really, really good for your skin. And I have gardener hands that crack and dry. So originally that, but then also I harvest them to eat. It's a very beef tasting animal. Surprisingly, even though they're like a bird. We have the cow with intentions of hopefully milking her eventually, but I don't recommend just having one cow. It makes it very difficult to tell when they're cycling to get them bred with AI. Don't just get one cow. We have a pony now. That's a very new thing because we're getting very settled. Okay, so some animals are for pure enjoyment and not necessarily super functional. The pony, hopefully I can get him. He's a cart trained pony. The dream would be that he would help carry my compost around for me with a little wagon. We'll see how that goes. I have peacock and pheasants that are ornamental. I don't eat them, but I love collecting their feathers. You know, I really wanted one of, you know, sometimes you see those massive vases full of peacock feathers in people's houses. Well, I wanted one of those, right? And it's cheaper to get a peacock than it is to buy all the feathers. And then you keep getting those feathers because they drop the feathers every year. So my guy, his name's Daniel, he's 6 now. And so I have a lot of peacock feathers, but I started using them in my flowers. So in my bouquet, you know, stick a few peacock feathers in. It's very cool. And same with the pheasants for their feathers. So for pure enjoyment. Yep. So that's pretty much what we have. And we have a couple livestock guardian dogs out in the barn, and then some house dogs, a whole bunch of cats. We have a ball python in the house and a red-eared slider turtle. So we have lots of animals.
Oh yeah, you got almost every different what do you call it? Not species, but genus or type of animal or whatever you call it.
Yeah, we have lots. Keeps me busy, but I love it. I love animals, probably more than people.
Yeah,
but
The emu oil, you mentioned that. Is that something that's like harvested when, say, you harvest the animal, or is that like something they naturally give off, or?
When you harvest the animal. So same like you get tallow like from a deer, or lard from a pig. It's the same thing. So emus have a long strip of fat at their very along their spine, and so you harvest it and you process it the same way you would do like a lard or a tallow, and then I just make salves with it, and it stopped my hands from bleeding. So it was definitely worth, but like, why did I need to get emus in order to, you can buy emu oil, just so you know, like that's right. A product you can buy. But I like doing things myself.
Yeah. Well, if
it's
it gives
a sustainable way.
Yeah. If it gives you enjoyment, and you know that the animals can have a nice, happy life while you're taking care of them, and then you also get to not have bleeding hands out of it. Well, I think that's a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you get interested in things, and then you want to do it right from the beginning. You see the whole process, right? So I like to crochet. I wanted to make my own yarn. I got sheep. I just sold them this year because I've had them for a while. But shearing a sheep and then making it into yarn. Well, and then there's some things that you decide, well, you know what? I don't need to do everything myself. And that became one of those things. You have to try the things to see what sticks and what you can actually physically manage, right? And that's one thing with homesteading, is you literally cannot do everything. So you need to pick what's the most valuable to you, because you can't. There's not enough hours in the day, right? But yeah, so making yarn was that was fun. It was fun to try, right? Like I tried it, but it did not stick.
Yeah.
All right. And so I want to ask you how you get into that. But before I do, I'm just thinking in my head too, like, where are emus from? And like, I don't know, like, are they peculiarities? Like they look like a bird. You mentioned they taste more like a beefy kind of taste. They're an odd duck, to pardon the pun, but.
Okay. So emus are from Australia. And they actually, there's this thing called the Emu War in like the 1940s or 1840s or something. There were so many emus there that they like went to war against the emus. It's a very interesting story. The emus won. Okay. So if you want to look that up, it's pretty interesting. But they do well in our climate. They're very good in the cold. You have to watch the ice because they have really long legs, right? They're all leg basically. So they're the same family as like an ostrich or a caraway, and that's a ratite. So they're the ratite family, and it's all dark meat. They have no white meat on them. They're all leg too. Like they don't really have like a breast, any breast meat or like any meat anywhere else. They're all leg, but it's really tasty. It tastes very much like a good grass-fed beef. And I kind of got into them not really realizing how good the meat was going to be. But in order to get the oil, you have to process them, and then you eat the meat, and it's really good. And for the longest time, I was like, well, I don't need cows because it's so much beef-like that it can replace beef in my diet. So we raise a couple of them up every year, and you can cook it in any dish that you would eat beef in, and it's pretty good. There's not a lot of meat on them though. It's not an efficient or like a cost-effective animal to grow out. Right. Yeah, their oil makes it worth it, because emu oil is actually very expensive if you want to buy it. And I get almost a gallon harvesting one emu. So like if you were to buy that, I don't even know, thousands of dollars. So that makes it worth it, and the meat's kind of like a byproduct. But yeah, it's a tasty, different type of animal to be able to eat. And they do really well in our climate. They are very easy keepers, very easy keepers. Yeah, that's about emus.
Yeah, those are they're certainly cool looking, and it's not something you're going to see everywhere. And it's great that you get the benefit out of them, and you get a kind of a nice treat sort of too. And then so right after you were talking about that, you mentioned making your own wool for doing your crochet. So how does that work? Because I kind of get the concept, like you shear the sheep, but after you got like the pile of wool, I don't really know what you do with it after that. So what do you do with it after that?
Okay, so when you shear the sheep, you have to wash. Well, first you have to clean wool. You have to it's called skirting, and you remove all of the parts near its like rear end or towards the ground, because those will be unusable. And then you have to wash the wool. And you have to be very careful, because if wool will mat, right? So you have to be very careful when you wash the wool. You more soak it to wash it. And then so after you do that, you have to dry it, and then you card it so that it straightens all the fibers. And so after you've straightened all the fibers, then you spin it on a spinning wheel. And then one sheep turns into enough to make, it's so little, like a headband maybe. Oh, wow. Like a little headband. Yeah. One shearing of a sheep. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, I would have figured you'd get like a shirt off or something.
Maybe a sweater.
Yeah. It takes a lot. It's a lot of wool to make anything. You need a lot of wool. So it was fun. It was very fun to do, but not economical, not top priority.
Yeah. And so like when you spin it up, like, so you like I guess I never really thought about this too much before, but like you got like your straightened fibers, and then how are you getting those fibers into this sort of like rope like thing? That's by the spinning. Like how does the spinning make that? How does that make a strand, say, yay long into a strand like a roll?
Well, the spinning wheel has the way you feed it onto the spinning wheel, it twists. So
okay, it twists, so it braids it.
Yeah, it just twists it. It twists it pretty tight.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's really cool. It's definitely like, give it a shot. One day when you guys got a big place and you got a big herd of sheep, and I hand sheared, which like is ridiculous. Like, why did I do that? Like with like, they're basically like big scissors, because big farms use like a clipper, like how you would shave a beard or your head or something. It's a sheep clipper, but I did it by hand, which takes a long time. Yeah, it was fun. Whatever, you only live once. You gotta try it. You gotta try all the things. Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention is also have meat rabbits. Meat rabbits were the first animal that I ever got, and so I've had them the whole time, and they're my meat. Rabbit meat is my favorite meat. Okay. And I forgot to mention that, so I have to tell you about the rabbits, or they'll be offended that I forgot to tell you about them.
Well, that's definitely one of the things that we thought about as like, if we were to ever get animals, that would be one of the first things you get. Like, and we even thought about it a little bit in our yard. I don't know if the yard's big enough for them, really, and like we couldn't just have them out in the back because our fences aren't tight enough to keep them in. And there's all kinds of wild rabbits around here too. So then we'd have God knows how many rabbits in the backyard before we knew it. Like there's a rabbit that's been in our backyard there the last couple of weeks, but we've had a couple of rabbits we got off of Hop a Flock of Farmstead there, and they're excellent. Yeah, we did them with a little bit of pork that we got from Kipling Ridge. Yeah. And we did them up with like side bacon, and then we kind of made like a little bit of sauce and cooked it all in a pot together, and we had chicken in there too. We had the chicken in there too. So we had the chicken, the pork, and the rabbit all cooked on a roast together, and it was really good. I think potatoes in there too. Yeah, and we had potatoes in there too, and it turned out really, really good. It was actually probably one of the favorite dishes I've had. And I really liked having the pork in there. Like, I felt like the extra fat really gave it something. But yeah, that's definitely something I think we would think about doing, especially if we had like property too. I think that'd be the first thing. In my mind, I see them as being lower maintenance. Is that sort of a naivety on my part?
No, they're pretty low maintenance. I would say they're easier keepers than chickens. But chickens are also pretty easy. Quail, I did quail for a while. Those are really easy, small animal to start with. You need to process a lot of them in order to get, it depends how large your family is that you're trying to feed, but no, rabbits are pretty easy. They're also really easy to process. So I don't know, like, if you guys would process yourself or if you would bring them to an abattoir. But rabbits they're so quick to process. I put up like 100 pounds of rabbit meat every year, like at least 100 pounds. They're really quick. I hate plucking chickens. I hate processing chickens. We bring them to the abattoir because plucking chickens is probably the worst job out of any of the processing of animals. But rabbits are really easy keepers. Like, for the most part, if you're doing them for meat rabbits, you want to keep them very clean. So most people put them in cages, and give them, they need to always have hay, and then pellets are from the co-op. You give them pellets and they'll eat a lot of things that grow around. So like foraging for them is super fun. They'll eat anything. Breeding, some people have a tricky time with that. But once you get going on it, they're really easy to breed, and the babies are really easy to, you don't have a lot of problems. Sometimes a few will die, but they're pretty easy. And there's way less rabbit sicknesses than there is like chicken, poultry sicknesses that you have to worry about. Like, rabbits are like, well, kind of like cats. They're either dead or alive. Like, how like a cat won't really show you that it's sick? Rabbits usually don't really show you they're sick. They may just die, but it's so rare that happen. Rabbits are the easiest keepers. That's why I've had them for so long. I love keeping them. They're a great, and their manure. Oh my gosh. Like, talk about that is like, that's a reason enough to keep rabbits, really. Their manure is so good on the garden. That's all you need. Like, I've grown plants like back in the day, when I didn't even know what I was doing. I'd just pile up all the rabbit manure and put all my like squash in there, plant my squash directly in the rabbit manure, and get just like massive amounts of squash. Like, it's so good for the garden. You could put it with every plant, but like, and I don't really recommend you plant directly into it. That's before I really knew what I was doing, but it works good. So fertilizer for a garden, that's enough of a reason, because it's a cold compost, right? It can go directly, you can spread it right around your plants. It's high in nitrogen, so you'd want to put it more around like leafy plants or things like that, fruit. So, cucumber, tomato, anything like that. Not really, it doesn't really, I don't see a benefit in root crops. I don't see that it really hits them that much, because it's too high nitrogen. And you want, for root crops, you want, if you put too much nitrogen, you'll just get all leaf and no root, right? But yeah, no, rabbit manure is it's gold right there. That, or like worm castings, that would be the next best thing.
Yeah, the worms we were looking into, we're planning on getting some worms and trying to do composting with them as well, because we want to try to get the worm castings going. The other day, Sophia baked up some egg shells and ground them up. We put them out there. I guess they're good for calcium and magnesium.
Yeah.
And then we also got some banana peels, which I think are potassium.
Yes, so banana peels are very, very good. Very, very good on almost every single plant. Yeah, I just got worms. Me and Restless Ravens and Ferm Oyalami, you guys them, we all split on a worm order, and we all started worms together at the same time because we all want worm castings. And you can't have too much. It's going good. It's fun. I don't know, a new thing. It's always fun. Yeah, it's going good. It's only been like 2 months, so I'll let you know in like a year when I have just tons of worm castings, because they're expensive to buy. Worm castings are really expensive. It's cheaper to do the worms. in the long run. If you're going to garden for a long time, it's cheaper to do the worms.
Yeah, we're thinking of doing both in the next few weeks when they become available locally. We're going to get the casting so we could throw on right away and get the worms so we can, start harvesting that.
Nice. Yeah. That's exciting. Very exciting.
And
that's good too, because, pardon?
Any tips for that?
Follow the instructions.
Pretty basic.
Honestly, follow the instructions, because pick one set to follow, because the problem with so much information being available, right? If you start going and looking at all different ways of doing it, you're going to get overwhelmed, because everybody has their own little unique way of doing things. Different things work different for different people. But if you find one way, or usually whoever you're buying the worms from, follow their method. Same with like composting. You really want to get into composting, find one person that, usually the more local, the better, right? Because climate and your environment has a lot to do with everything. So if you want to even just compost in the backyard, but like find somebody locally that's really, into composting and do what they do. That's your best bet on anything you're going to do. Because environment has so much to do with it. You can't follow somebody's instructions that lives in the US, or even somebody from Southern Ontario. Our climate is totally different. Our bugs are different. Everything is different.
Yeah, and that's another thing too that we found with a lot of people that we talk to. And an important thing that we've come across too, especially, is securing seeds and like developing seeds to our own local climate. Like, say, when you go to the store and you buy a bag of tomato seeds or whatever, they're probably some variety that they harvested from somewhere in the States or Southern Ontario, where they have a big operation. And so, yeah, the tomatoes will grow here in the summer, but they're not going to thrive in the same way that if you harvest seeds from your own plants, that they're going to do better, right? Because they adapt over time. Each generation gets more adapted to the environment they're growing in.
Exactly. Well, absolutely. But even as much as your backyard compared to, your 3 doors down, you guys could have a totally different little microclimate, and things will do differently for them than they would for you. It's once you find something that works really good, stick with it. Like, experimenting is very fun, but if you find something good, you grow that same kind every year. Yeah.
Yeah, and then even when you were talking about the rabbits there, again, I was just thinking about it. You mentioned people were keeping them in like in a cage. So is that common that you'll keep them in like a rabbit tree where they got a small area and you let them out to forage kind of every now and again, and then you keep them in there? Or are they generally cage kept, or what's the sort of?
I keep mine in cages full time, because I really do grow them for like the max production of meat, right? I eat a lot of rabbit meat. And putting them on the ground, I have noticed you have a very high chance of coccidiosis, and that will kill them. Or it just makes their liver really dirty, and then you can't eat their liver, and rabbit liver is amazing. So there's all kinds of ways. My way is not the only way to raise rabbits, right? There's many different ways. I like to go and forage for them and bring it to their cage. Sometimes I'll put them out like in like people like you like a chicken tractor, but for a rabbit, like a rabbit tractor, and let them eat that way. That's kind of fun for them. But rabbits don't really care if they're in a cage. If it's a big enough cage and you keep it clean, they want a clean cage. And if they have everything they need, they're not living a miserable life. They're pretty happy and content. It's one of the few animals that it's the only animal actually that I do that way, because everybody else kind of ranges or has big pens. But it doesn't affect them the same way as the rabbits. That's how you get a sick rabbit, is you put them on the ground.
Okay. So it's actually better, because like I'm thinking then maybe we could have a couple of rabbits. I know of a little spot in the yard, maybe they would fit. Then if that's the case, I was thinking like it would make sense to me if you had them in cages, if you had like a kind of cage that was open on the bottom, the droppings would drop out, and then you could just scoop them out every day or whatever, right? And then pile them into a compost pile and then break that down and then scatter it on your garden.
Yeah, or you can just have the cages, like some people do hanging, like a structure, and you hang the cages under it. Mm-hmm. And so the floor is mesh, right? Like it's not a solid floor in a cage, and the droppings fall to the ground. And you can just put like Rubbermaid totes or whatever under there to catch the droppings. And then whether you want to pile them somewhere or you just put them directly straight into your garden, because it's a cold compost and they can go directly on, like they can touch your plants.
Right.
Yeah. Hanging cages, like, I don't know. Yeah. It clean up very easy on them. It's not something you don't have to clean every day because they're never sitting in their manure ever.
Right. Yeah, because it falls right out the bottom. So that's kind of the best case scenario.
Yeah.
And you have them inside or outside?
In the barn. So I have hanging cages barn.
Yeah, the winters must get too cold for them out in the cage to be out there. If you had them in a box. No?
Oh, no. Absolutely, you can have them outside. Well, because before we bought this farm, I lived off grid in the bush. Okay. So I didn't have a barn. I didn't have really awesome structures. And rabbits the heat is way more detrimental to them than the cold. Mm-hmm. Rabbits do very well in the cold. So as long as they're out of the wind, the rain, the snow, they do fine. It can be frustrating because then you got frozen waters in the winter, that's probably the worst part. But no, they can be outside. They absolutely can be outside.
Okay. Sounding even better.
Yeah.
So and then you mentioned you had the Nubian goats there, and we seen that you were making your own cheese. And do you do the milk as well, or do you any other dairy products like a kefir or anything like that?
Well, the milking is new to us this year. So when everybody was panic buying toilet paper, we bought our first goat because we were like, we can't live without cheese. Like, how could we live? So we literally panic bought a goat. So we're just starting to milk now. It's going really well. I don't really drink milk. My partner loves milk a lot. So he is very much into drinking this milk, and the goats are mostly his. Like every other animal, every garden is mine. The goats are his. He loves the goats. And making the cheese has been amazing. That's the first time I've ever done it. Like the first time we've ever had raw milk. And we're big cheese eaters. So it's definitely amazing. It takes a lot of milk to make cheese is what I've learned. A lot of milk, and especially if you like to eat cheese. So this is a slow thing, but now like we've grown the herd, and so hopefully eventually we'll have enough milk to be able to make enough cheese. And maybe if the cow ever gets pregnant, we can milk her and have enough. But it's, you gotta have long-term goals. The cheese making is very fun. It's way easier than you would ever imagine. I thought making cheese was going to be tricky and like, could screw it up. But it's very simple. It's very easy to make cheese. I would say like if you could bake bread, you make cheese. And we haven't really had the quantity and of milk yet to really try anything else. I know Nathan really wants to make yogurt, so that might be the next thing that we try and make. Kefir, him and I really aren't into that, but I know he really wants to make yogurt, and he loves drinking the milk. Nubian milk is like, I don't even know like cream, like at the grocery store, like table cream. That's how creamy and thick it is, and it doesn't separate like cow's milk. So cow's milk, the cream rises to the top and you can scoop it off, but goat milk is like homogenized, so all of it is that thick and creamy. Yeah, so it's very rich. It's super rich. It makes a really good cheese. It doesn't make a difference in the cheese. the cheese just tastes really good. It doesn't taste anything like if you've ever had goat cheese from the store. Nothing like that at all. Like, can't compare. It's like growing your own tomato versus buying a grocery store tomato, right? Like the grocery store tastes like water, and like tomato tastes like a tomato. So you can't compare the two. It's really, really good. Good enough that we're going to keep going on this and try and do as much milk as we can to make as much cheese as we can. Because it's very valuable and worth the work that it takes, you know. Keeping milking animals is, I don't know, you just need good fences.
Yeah, I guess as long as you give them a nice spot where they can kind of run around and all that kind of thing. And then I wonder if like, do you have to milk them really often once you get them going? Because like, for example, we just interviewed a dairy farmer there, and he milks his cows like every 2 days.
No, twice a day.
Sorry, twice a day. Sorry, yes, sorry, twice a day. Yeah, it was every 2 days he shipped out his milk. That's what it was. But so with the goats, do you milk them say every day once you get them going, or
same as a cow?
Okay, same as a cow. So you're doing them twice a day?
Yeah, they just are smaller animals. They give less milk.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah, but it's the exact same. Everything is pretty much the same as a cow. Yeah. Yep.
So then, like, so you get enough, say, with your herd grown out now, where you're sort of meeting some of your dairy needs, or you still think you're going to grow your herd a little more?
No, we have enough goats now. We have enough goats. We need to get the cow going is what we're going to have to do. Well, I don't know. He kind of wants one more goat. We'll see.
One more.
Yeah. Oh, we have 3 girls and 1 boy. So we have 4. And yeah, he wants 1 more girl. We'll see how that goes. And then that would be quite a bit. It would be enough that we could maybe make enough cheese for us that we wouldn't ever buy it again, you know, which would be cool. I'm really into that, right? Like replacing, if there's nowhere because you can't really buy raw, like you can't buy raw milk and you can't buy raw milk cheese. Like those are things that you can't really buy. So if we can replace that, because it tastes way better, that's the goal. But the cow, I'm banking on the cow. So like the cow is more my animal and the goats are more his animal, but like his goats are doing better than my cow. So, you know, we're making do for right now. With the goat.
So you're 10 years down the line of, you know, living this sustainable lifestyle. Do you go to the grocery store often? Like how often would you go and what kind of stuff would you even get?
Well, we still buy cheese.
Right. But you're working on that.
Yeah. What do we even buy? We buy cheese and yogurt. Well, like flour and sugar and salt. I haven't got good at doing like any of the like paprika. I do a lot of herbs, but like I still buy paprika a lot. Sometimes I still get like frozen Brussels sprouts because I haven't been able to grow those very well. And broccoli, I struggle with broccoli. I'm trying it again this year, but broccoli is a hard one for me and I love broccoli. We go like every 2 weeks we go because if like there's something, I drink a lot of tea and I can't grow tea and he drinks coffee and we don't grow coffee. Every 2 weeks there's usually something we need from town, so like we'll go. But like when the pandemic stuff, we went 2 months without going to the grocery store. Like we have so much food here. It's just maybe some of the treats or like chocolate bars, maybe, you gotta still have treats sometimes. But yeah, we don't really buy meat. We don't really buy any vegetables. In the winter, I grow sprouts in my kitchen window so that we have at least something fresh to eat, and a few herbs, so that we have something fresh still, right? Because you can only eat like canned food or stored food for so many meals before like you miss that fresh taste. And sprouts have been one way that we really have gotten over that hump. Yeah, so we don't really buy a lot from the grocery store. I'm trying to think, but there, you know, some treats and stuff, because like, I don't know, we're human.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah,
there's some stuff that we just can't grow, can't make, and like that's a treat. I don't know. But we don't, it's not much. Like I can a lot, and we freeze a lot. Like it's a lot. My whole kitchen is shelves of like canned food that we put up, and like we have big deep freezers that we put all the meat in, and yeah. it's a lot of work. Sometimes, you know, it would be nice to just go to the grocery store, and sometimes we do, like if we're gonna have company over, or something unexpected comes up, like we'll go to the grocery store and get like frozen pizzas. You know, we're not like so strict on we like only eat our food we grow, right. But it just makes a huge difference. But also, like when you grow all your own food, then you have to cook it all. Like I cook all of our meals like from scratch every day, right? Like that's also a lot of work. Yeah. So, you know, once in a while to get a frozen pizza or something, you know, we're not purists here.
Yeah, well, it's nice to have a night off from cooking, just like anything else. Like
yeah.
does most of the cooking around here too, and every now and again she likes having a night off, because it's a lot of work what you're doing all day long, and then on top of that, cooking. When I know when I get home from work, say like I'm not really thinking about cooking a meal, I'm thinking about kind of relaxing a little bit, hanging out with the family, and that's it. And I know Sophia like to do the same sometimes too. So yeah, we're the same thing too. Like we like trying to cook our own stuff and eat sort of local healthy stuff as much as possible. But every now and again, yeah, you have a treat, or you do something that's kind of easy or whatever. And
yeah, because you have to give yourself some grace, and like that's the only way you can keep going, you know, to strive for better and better, is you got to cut yourself some slack. And like that's the biggest thing Nathan could ever do. If he knows I'm really stressed out, because you know there's times of the year when there's a lot to do, so he'll go to the grocery store and get some meals for himself that like he could cook himself, you know, or for me too. And that is huge for me. Like that is the biggest thing. And I'm so grateful that, you know, he thinks that way, that he wants to give me a break because he can see I'm stressed out. So he'll go get some sort of, you know, like oven ready-made food or something for himself, and like that he could take to work with him and everything. Because it just gives me a little bit of a break, because it is, yeah, it's a lot of work to cook all your food. And to do all the dishes from cooking all your food, like the cleanup, it's a whole, you know, it's half my day is cook, and it's just the two of us. Like we don't have little kids anymore. Our kids are grown. So anybody that's trying to do with little kids, like I can't even imagine when I was back with little kids, doing it that way. Like there's no, even if you made one meal a week from scratch, you'd be a superhero in my mind, because little kids, man, that's that's a full-time job, you know. And yeah. Cooking is a full-time job. It's a lot of work. That's why things were different way back, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Sophia is she's trying to imagine that, because we're kind of doing that. We're increasing growing stuff out there all the time, and then we got our own little kids running around too. So it is a little bit of that. And so I mean, and Sophia still cooks like a lot. We don't like, we mostly eat from scratch anyways. Like it'll be meat. We don't season our food really all that much, like basic stuff like your salt, pepper, garlic, that kind of thing, paprika. And then like your potatoes or whatever you'll do for a side.
We have a very Mediterranean diet, so it's not anything too complicated.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. But it's still, you know, trying to time everything that it's already at the same time. If you're doing like a meat and a side and a, no, it's a lot.
Yeah, just in general, being at home and taking care of the home, just like you're doing it in your way and I do it in my way, it just takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy.
Oh, it's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of work.
It's so much work. It is so much work, but I don't know. Keep up the good work. And to anybody that's maybe listening and, feels like they should be doing more, every little bit, it will get you to the bigger places. You have to start with the little bits. Taking your kids out for like one walk, even if you only have one day off, you take them outside 15 minutes. That's better than nothing. You take them to a park when it's a nice day for a few hours and you look at the different trees and you try and, figure out what the different trees are. You grow a box of lettuce on your patio. Every little step that you can take to get closer to nature and the natural ways, cooking from scratch, one meal a week, like it doesn't have to be big things. It will make a huge difference in your life. It really will, a huge difference in your life. And I feel like that's something people, they don't give themselves enough credit. It's hard to change.
Yeah, I mean, that is part of it as a realization, because as we talk to a lot of people that are doing this, we do talk a lot about how much work it is and all that kind of stuff. We talk a lot about the reward of it, but that's a good point you're making, that allowing yourself to sort of feel like, you don't have to be a person who kills themselves every day, working their fingers to the bone. It's like, give yourself a little bit of a break sometimes. Appreciate how much work you really did do, even if you only got one thing done. It's like, it's like for you, that might have been so much work that one thing was like really that's what you could manage today. And if you could figure out how to do an extra thing tomorrow or an extra thing some other time, then I mean, you strive for that, because you always want to try to get better. I tend to think, but you still got to be able to take the little victories and be grateful for that, and be happy that when you get when you get anything done, just be grateful that you make any forward progress, really. The little inches make up the mile.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank you for coming and talking to us. It was a lot of fun. It was really cool hearing about how you got started and what you've been doing out there and all that. If you'd like anyone to be able to get a hold of you to get your flowers, or how would they go about doing that?
I have a website, Kaila's Flower Farm. It's pretty easy. You're welcome to look there and see what I do. I'm in field, so I mostly cater to West Nipissing, but this year I started doing Sudbury as well, so that's pretty exciting. But yeah, Kaila's Flower Farm online, that's .com. And thank you guys. This was fun. It kind of, we went all over the place, but it was super fun to talk to you.
Well, I'm glad, because we tend to be sort of like that anyways. It kind of goes all over the place, but I think we always have fun. So I'm glad you had fun, because that's mostly what we want out of this.
Yeah, no, great chat.
Perfect.
All right, thanks so much.
Okay, bye.